If you look at the internet and things like that, apparently I'm the man that started the Punky Reggae Party. And by this they mean that I was the DJ at the very first punk rock club in London. My parents came over in the 50s. They were part of what you'd call the Windrush generation. And they brought with them their hopes, their dreams, and their precious record collections. And it was the music of Jamaica that would actually facilitate their integration into white society. My father even had a sound system, but it's not like the big fuck-off systems you have these days. It was a small thing. And he'd play after church on a Sunday. You know, it was a way for the Jamaican community to come together and ease the pain of a hard-working week and the pain of being strangers in a strange land. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my journey started when I first saw The Who in 1971. I was 15 years old, and it changed my life. I knew that I wanted to be involved in this energy that was unfolding in front of my eyes. And I guess the next stepping stone in my musical journey would have been seeing Bob Marley in 1975. After that show, I was so excited that I followed his coach back to his hotel, and we struck up a relationship. And then I guess the thing that really kicked everything off was the birth of punk rock in 1977. You know, if you look at the internet and things like that, apparently I'm the man that started the Punky Reggae Party. And by this they mean that I was the DJ at the very first punk rock club in London. And it was so early in the punk rock days, there were no English punk records to play. So I played what I liked. I played hardcore dub reggae. And the punks loved it. They loved the fact that the lyrics had a kind of musical reportage quality. They loved the fact that the music was obviously anti-establishment. They loved the bass lines, and they loved the weed. It has to be said. So in this club, there was this kind of cultural exchange. And out of this cultural exchange, indeed, came this punky reggae party ethos that would inform things like the whole two-tone movement. But I want to let people know that Don Letts was part of an ongoing dynamic that was started by Trojan Records in 1968. Trojan Records is the UK's first independent reggae label. And most interestingly, it was launched the same year that a politician called Enoch Powell made something called the Rivers of Blood speech. You know, it brought racism to the top of the argument. But at the same time, Trojan Records is launched. And it was the music of Jamaica that captured the imagination of my white friends and brought us together on a grassroots level, on the streets, in the playground, you know, in the clubs. So it was really Trojan that started this punky reggae thing. You know, John Lydon would have been hip to Trojan Records. Joe Strummer would have been hip to Trojan Records. Terry Hall would have been hip to Trojan Records. Anyway, by the mid-70s, I'd seen The Who, I'd seen Bob Marley, and I've got a soundtrack to ease my pain. I've got reggae to ease my pain. But in the mid-70s, my white friends weren't so lucky. The popular music of the time was a million miles from the vibe on the street. It didn't reflect the streets at all. So my white friends set about creating a soundtrack that was relevant to their situation, punk rock. So I'm DJing at the Roxy, and the whole DIY thing is kicking off. And I think that's punk rock's greatest gift, the whole idea of DIY, do it yourself. So when my white friends are picking up guitars, I wanted to pick up something too. I picked up a Super 8 movie camera and reinvented myself as Don Letts the filmmaker. And through the friendships that I made with some of the punk rockers, they asked me to make their music videos. And the first music video I made was for Public Image's first single. Wasn't that great, because it was, you know, when I started filming, I was using my Super 8 camera. But to have things shown on TV, you have to have a union crew. So for that video, all of a sudden, I'm in a room with 10 white guys I've never met, telling them what to do. And I was a little out of my depth, you know, to be honest. And I think the only real strength of that video is the band's performance, particularly John's performance. Then The Clash asked me to make their first video. I'm like, okay, this time I'm gonna get my head around this thing. And I decided to shoot it by the River Thames, because the song's called London Calling, and in the chorus it's something about live by the river. And I decided to shoot this video by the Thames, put a camera on a boat, and yeah, get busy. Now, problem is I can't swim. So I didn't know that the Thames has a tide, and not only does it flow, it kind of goes up and down as well. By the time I'd worked out the logistics of how to make this thing work, it was no longer daytime, it was nighttime, and it was pissing down with rain. Turned out to be the best luck I could ever have, because it gave me a production value that budget could never have done. In fact, one of the videos that I'm most proud of is a video I made for a band called Musical Youth, and the track's called Pass the Dutchie. And this track was absolutely massive around the world. In 18 countries around the world, it went to #1. And for my generation, black and British, it was like a calling card. It sort of said, look, we're here. You know, we've got something to bring to the party.